And then we'll go ahead and move on to our, our budget work session number 3, FY 2026 budget questions and answers.
Yeah, I'll just kick us off. There are 2 tonight that we wanted to cover because I think the vast majority of the summer school ones we did write up, but were answered in some of the conversations that we've had tonight. So we want to answer question 38 and then the other one that was submitted by Ms. Tice and Ms. Sherwood about Oak Street Elementary School.
Okay. And before we get to that, just if you don't mind, just kind of a reflection period of where we are with the budget, and then we'll dive into the questions. And I'm asking board members here if there's any reflections as we've gone through this process. I think the one that I have, I'll just kick this off, is the overall budget, to use Bethany's phrase of zooming out. We're still trying to identify how the city is doing with our revenue. Obviously, there's a lot of questions around where the federal government is coming with funding. With our conversations with our city council counterparts, we have signaled that we're going to meet guidance at 5.9%, which is a significant down from our original of 8 or 9% when we started this in December. I'm very impressed with the staff and the school board and how we all have tried to get to that point. We understand that the city is, and really a lot of us are in turbulent times with not understanding what's happening in front of us. The one thing we do know what's happening in front of us, because it's happening now, is we do have a significant amount of enrollment. We have students being enrolled every week. We want to make sure that our student-teacher ratio is low. That's why people come to Falls Church City. That's why they don't want to move. They want to move here, and they don't want the experience of other neighboring districts where that's not the case. And in my mind, to be able to do that, we really need that 5.9%. Those are all front-facing, student-facing teachers. And there is one activities and athletics director position to make that whole, which is also, in my mind, is supportive of all the activities and our students appreciate and attend. But I feel like this is, as we start to round this process out, I really hope that we can adhere to the 5.9% and hope we get that from the city, because this would be we want to keep to our student-teacher ratio. That's one of my overall thoughts, but I welcome any other initial thoughts on specifics of the budget or how we're approaching this before we jump into the questions from anyone on the board. As I drag this out, just look down. Everyone's got their eyes down. Okay, there's Ann. Yes.
No, I think I agree with you, and I think that was very well said, and I think it reflects well at least many of the sentiments that I've heard in conversation with others. And I just want to sort of double down on this idea, not just that we keep the class sizes the same, but we've had a lot of focus on enrollment growth, and it's important to meet those numbers. But I also just really want to express what I've heard others, including Dr. Noonan, say, which is what we want to do is serve every student who's coming, whenever they come, wherever they're coming from, as well as we have been, and as well as our school district has always tried to do. And so I think we owe all students sort of the vibrant community and the kind of the small classrooms and the kind of education that we've been trying to offer. And so, I see this budget as trying to do that. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ann. Jared?
Yeah, I largely agree with that sentiment. I do want to clarify, though, just for public's sake, the 5.9% guidance coming in at that does that still mean that we are going to fund some of the private placement out of one-time funds, and then also the parent resource?
I think if we are able to get the good question. Mm-hmm. If we're able to get the 5.9%, we would be able to do the superintendent's proposed budget that had those in it. Okay. So I think it would be funded out of the 5.9%, and that's simply because the state has come in higher than we anticipated, and we're starting to do some analysis right now on our healthcare costs. It does look like we put a placeholder of 10%. In for additional costs on healthcare. I think we're going to come in a little bit under that, but not by much. So that might free up a few more dollars. But in the end, it does take care of the things that you've mentioned.
Great. Yeah, yeah, and I think with the budget, I think we've done a pretty good job of making sure that like Ann was saying, that the services that the community has come to expect that we provide students, not just small classes, but making sure that they have access to student activities, whether that be sports or quiz bowl or you name it. And I think with the coming growth and the growth already experienced within the year, I think is important for the community to kind of understand that that is something that we will have to continue to ensure that we fund in the future, and especially with potentially hard times coming. I don't think that we can always rely on people going out to restaurants in Falls Church to fund all of this. And so I think we've been very thoughtful in what positions we're funding, and ensuring those positions are kind of making the student experience the priority.
Thank you, Jared. Any other questions or comments? Bethany?
Yep. Dr. Noonan, I want to echo something that you said, which is that at the 5.9%, we'll be able to fund the superintendent's proposed budget. And one of the things that I think is really important in that is that it honors the collective bargaining agreement with teachers and staff. That to me is one of it's critical promise that we made as a district. I think it's really, really important that we honor. And so I appreciate the intentionality of you and your team of making sure that that is in there.
Thank you, Bethany. Any other comments or questions? Reflections? Seeing none, I guess we'll turn it over to Ms. Michael for going through the questions that we have listed. Thank you, Ms. Michael.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to present the budget question responses. I'm tied very much into the conversation you were just having. In the response to question number 38, we look at the cost estimate for summer school, what we had anticipated we would save based on our preliminary thoughts, and then what we will actually save based on the plan that was presented to you this evening. So if you look in the proposed budget, we had estimated that we would save just under $118,000 in terms of the changes to our summer school program. And then when we calculated based on the final numbers that were presented to you tonight, looking at how many staff we had hired last year versus how many we'll be hiring this year, that actual savings is $100,000. So there is that gap of $18,000 that will be factored into all of those adjustments that are made in terms of the additional revenue at the advertised budget stage. Any questions on that? Okay. So the next question that we have. John? No. Is number 49, John, is where we're going to jump to. And question number 49 was related to Oak Street and the leaks that we experienced there. I believe it was like 2 Saturdays ago. And the question had to do with, is the roof replacement included in the upcoming CIP that we have funding budgeted for? When we look at the roof at Oak Street Elementary, it's not anywhere really near its end of useful life. But we did experience during that last really heavy rain leaks that we hadn't experienced before. And we had made previous repairs to that roof, and we thought we had the problems resolved, but with that rain, clearly we did not. So we had a roofing contractor who was actually out there either yesterday or today. The days are blending together for me. And they were able to identify 2 different locations where they believe that water came in. That places where that water is coming in very well could be related to the window work that was done on Oak Street, putting in the windows. So one of the things that we'll be doing is we'll be reaching out to that contractor. We have photos that the roofing company took for us showing exactly where those 2 things occurred. And then we've also told them that we immediately want to get them replaced or repaired. So we'll work on getting that repaired as we go back to the window contractor to try to get that assessed. So for example, in one of the places there appears to be a small tear, likely from when the windows were set down. If they weren't set down completely level and they had set it down on the corner, that would have caused a tear in the roof. And then the other location where they had put in stuff related to the secure vestibule, right, there is a penetration in the roof and likely the leak is there. So fixing that is of our highest priority. We absolutely don't want any water damage occurring within that school. And every time we've had any water damage, we have immediately remediated it. And then just to follow up, kind of related to this question, after we had the water damage on the first floor, we also did have that entire first floor tested for mold as well. And all of our mold testing results are available on our website under facilities under air quality. So thank you for the opportunity to present that response as well.
And those mold tests came back
Yes.
completely clear.
Correct,
Which was good.
correct. That's probably the key thing I should have stated. So thank you for adding that.
Additional questions on question number 49 about the Oak Street roof? Ann?
I appreciate all of that detail and that you were so quick to get in a contractor to look at that. And so just so that I'm clear, I know that there's some mention of, for instance, ceiling tiles and some carpet that had been damaged. And I don't know if it was this most recently or prior, but all of that has been fixed or is in process of being fixed.
The one thing that is not fixed is on the lowest level, the first floor of Oak Street, near the custodial storage closet. When we had the flooding before, we have floor tiles that are unglued, right? And we will not re-glue those floor tiles until the summer. But there's nothing wrong with the floor there. They're just missing the floor tiles. All the carpet and then the ceiling tiles have all been repaired. Generally, when we have water leaks on the ceiling tile, it's related to something with the HVAC unit. But certainly we want anyone, any teacher, any principal, if they have any water damage or anything that they notice, to immediately place a work order ticket within our work order system, and then we'll immediately get them replaced.
Okay, thank you. And you answered my next question which is a little bit beyond the scope of this, but it sounds like there is a good process in place for reporting and having those things followed up on. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Ann. Any other questions about question number 49? Okay. Any other reflections on the budget? Kathleen?
Thank you. I just wanted to kind of throw out some thoughts to my colleagues here, not expecting any final decisions tonight, but just something to think about when I know that a lot of work is done looking at all the requests that come in and trying to decide funded versus unfunded, and I know a lot of thought has gone into that. So I don't want to minimize that. But when I look at, it's always interesting to read through the unfunded list, and one thing that stood out to me on the unfunded list, I know if we could wave a magic wand, we'd all fund everything. But none of us, I don't think, have that. But when I was looking at the unfunded list, one thing that stood out to me as something that I could see a lot of, you get a lot of bang for your buck out of potentially, is funding the elementary assistant principals throughout the summer. And I could imagine that continuity of leadership over the summer would be really valuable. So that's something that I would be personally interested in exploring and seeing if there's an opportunity to put that back in the budget. So I just wanted to sort of put that out there to my colleagues to think about. I know I've spoken to several of you about it. Something that I would support if we can find a way to do it, and happy to have further conversations about it or hear more from the staff on the perspective on the hard work that was done on why it didn't make the unfunded list, if there's something we're missing here. Just putting it out there.
Lori?
Were the assistant principals included in the compensation study?
Yes, the assistant principals were included in the compensation study.
And I don't expect you to know this information offhand. Where did they fall? Like, if someone's making, let's say, $120,000 a year, it's either $10,000 a month or it's a little bit more per month but less months.
So one of the things when we did the compensation study is we looked at contract length, right? Because it's really important that you're not comparing an 11-month salary to a 12-month salary.
Right, exactly.
When you look at contract lengths for elementary assistant principals, 11 months is very common, right? But we certainly understand the value of having them be a 12-month contract instead of 11 months.
Okay, and within that 11 months, if you're comparing apples to apples with other jurisdictions on 11 months, did they fall in the middle?
When we did the compensation study, they were within the range that we were looking for, which was
Okay.
really 95 to 105% of that market average.
Okay, I mean, while I think everybody deserves more money and everybody should be extended, I do worry that picking out specific parts of groups that were in the compensation study and looking to give that one group a raise, but not other groups that were also in the compensation study that also fell in the middle. We're kind of opening up a can of worms that maybe we don't want to do, not that I don't believe they deserve it.
So when you look at an employee who's 11 months versus 12 months, really their hourly wage is very, very similar. There's some slight difference because of the addition of annual leave, but it's really not a change in their pay rate. What the change is that they have to work an additional number of days and then they're compensated for those days. So it's very similar to when we've made other contract length changes, whether it was probably the most recent one that we did was the athletic trainer at the high school when that contract length was extended. What we really look at in that case is what is the work that we need this position to do and when does that work need to be done, right? And so, for example, in the athletic trainer, because of all of the athletic tryouts and everything that happens, it made absolute perfect sense to have that longer contract length of time, right? So similarly, when you look at the APs and the work that they need to accomplish, that additional time, right, would allow them to provide additional work and support over that summer period.
So I guess that goes to Dr. Noonan, is there enough, do you feel the need that they should be working for that extra month or?
Well, we would love to have all of our employees that are, available for 12-month contracts to be on 12-month contracts. I think that's the perfect contract for a school administrator because they can work throughout the summer. We have some heavy times of registration they can certainly help with. We didn't fund it just because we felt like there were other priorities that were higher, but it doesn't mean that it wasn't a priority. But just to sort of pick up on what Ms. Michael was saying, just to give you another example, we do have teachers, for example, who teach 5 sections of algebra, and if we need a 6th section of algebra, we will pay a teacher to do that extra section of algebra. So we do it with all of our, I'm trying to think of the right word, but wherever the employee is, whether it's a teacher or an administrator or whomever, the goal is to get the length right. Some of it may be short-term, some of it may be long-term, but the pay rate, the daily pay rate doesn't change. It would remain the same. It's just the length of the contract would change.
Sure.
We
Okay.
have some 11-month teachers right now who are teaching in our hybrid program. And if we had a 10-month teacher who wanted to take one of those positions because somebody left, they would have that opportunity as well.
But these are salaried, so if a assistant principal is making $120,000 for the 11 months, they would then be making $130,000 or something for 12 months?
Correct.
Is what
They'd
you're
be
saying?
making whatever that 11-month is divided by 11.
Right.
And add to it, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Kathleen?
Sorry, I just meant to follow up. On top of that, it's relatedly, I'm just curious to learn more about the parent resource engagement specialist moving from 10 to 11 months too, and the support that they might be able to provide over the summer and what that would look like, or if that's something else that would be worth exploring. Obviously, I know that population is growing and there's a lot of need over the summer. If we feel like the need is met in other ways, then that's certainly fine. But if you think that there's a lot of value to that extra month of that contract, I'd be curious.
So currently, when we need additional support from our parent liaisons over the summer, right, we pay them on an hourly basis to meet that need, right? So one of the things that we would want to consider in both of these cases is the work that's required all day, every day, in which case, like doing a contract length extension is the best option, or if the work is sporadic or not the full day, paying them on an hourly basis could be a better solution.
That makes sense. And I imagine that where people are in their lives, sometimes they're really ready for more summer work and sometimes they're really not. So I imagine it's employee to employee makes a difference too.
Thanks, Kathleen. Other questions or thoughts? Anne?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure I understood in, when you were talking, Dr. Noonan, about how the state funding has come in to fill the gap. And so some of the things that would have been considered one-time funding before are not necessarily. I just wanted to understand if that was true for sort of all of those things that had been previously identified as above the 5.9%. So including, for instance, the athletic materials. Is that something that we would see then funded year over year, or is that
We could put that in as a year over year.
Okay.
Yeah. And just to make sure that I'm not over promising what the state is going to provide, we haven't actually gotten the spreadsheets yet. The budget was passed by both the Senate and the House. They came to a reconciliation budget over the weekend. As soon as we get the spreadsheets, we'll know more, but then we can plug in our information and it'll tell us exactly what those numbers are. There was a delta between the Senate version and the House version, and my sense is it probably came in, our money will come in somewhere in the middle, which is just the right amount for us to be able to actually cover that gap that we had between the 6.2 and the 5.9%. Absolutely.
Any other questions or comments for the budget process? All right, well, that concludes our budget question number 3, or session number 3. I think we have one more on the books that we'll go through if we have questions from the board